Okay, if everybody can take their seats, we'll get started.
Clear path.
Everybody get their mics on? Welcome, everybody. This is the December 17, 2025 meeting of the Freeport Project Review Board. Tonight we have 3 items on the agenda, and at the end, you're going to walk us through kind of the board as an overview of the ordinances, right? Yep. Great. Can you give us a staff update, Kyle?
Yeah, so update on the planning board discussion from this past month. So the planning board looked at some updates to the text draft to the design review ordinance update that we've been going through. So a couple meetings ago, the planning board had some comments and staff had some revisions as well. So we took an update of the design review language for kind of like a final look before we send it out to have the consultant put the graphics and the new map in there. So once that comes back, we'll invite the PRB out to the planning board meeting when the new version is ready to go, so the PRB can take a look at that and give comments. The planning board is made sure they want that feedback. So we'll send that invite when it's ready. And then the other discussion at the planning board was an update, an overview on LD 1829, which is a newish state law, kind of following LD 2003. Some state law updates regarding housing and the ability for communities to provide more housing supply in town. So that will eventually potentially have impacts on projects that we see at the PRB. So at some point we'll probably do an update here as well. But if anyone wants to go back, you can listen to the planning board meeting from December and listen to the discussion as well. Staff approvals, we had a staff review board meeting a week or 2 ago. We had a shoreline stabilization approved at 42 Brickyard Cove, and we had a site plan amendment for the campground at Wolf's Neck approved as well, which was basically an after-the-fact compliance issue where they had some additional campsites over the years that had popped up that were never approved, but mostly in wooded and grassed areas that didn't actually result in any new impervious cover on the ground. So just those 2 items. That's it.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Anyone have any questions for Kyle? No. Okay, I'll note that we have a quorum, and the first item is approval of the minutes from the November 19 meeting. Anyone have any questions or additions to Sharon's minutes? Is there a motion to approve as accepted? Is there a second? Thank you, Sharon. First item is Prout Road Solar, third appearance that you folks have made here. I think we covered a lot of our questions last time, but we had the outstanding issue of the stormwater. And why don't you tell us where we stand there?
Yeah, so I'll just give an update on the stormwater piece because that's where we left it last time when the board tabled the discussion. So since then, the applicant submitted revised plans and stormwater management report. We had comments from the peer review engineer. So that applicant submission was December 3rd, and then the memo from the peer review engineer was on December 8th. There were still some remaining comments, and that's where I had left it in the staff report when I sent that out to you. After the staff report went out, we did get a follow-up submission on December 11th from the applicant, and then that submission was also reviewed by our peer review engineer, and we got an updated memo from them on December 12th. Staff, the applicant engineer, and our peer review engineer also had a Teams call yesterday just to go over some of the remaining comments for clarification. A lot of the comments from the December 8th peer review memo had been addressed. The wetland water levels, the way that the impervious area was being calculated, the quality calculations meeting the standard in our stormwater ordinance. So there were just a few remaining things. So basically the outcome of that call was at this point, Staff and our peer review engineer feels comfortable doing a condition of approval to address those remaining comments. So at the dais, you should have gotten an updated copy of the draft findings of fact with a completed and filled out language for the stormwater finding, and an updated motion and conditions of approval to reflect the applicant addressing those couple remaining stormwater comments prior to getting a building permit. So that's pretty much update for me. Happy to answer any questions, but I turn it over to the applicant, and if we need to go over any other aspects of the project again, we can, but yeah, I think we touched on most of it at the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Sounds like I'm plugged in. For the record, Mike Sudak, Adder Engineering, here on behalf of Power Road Solar. Thank you for the overview. Yeah, you touched on basically everything. I'd be happy to go through any of the details from that. Quite a bit of back and forth between Goral Palmer and Kyle and myself since the last time we spoke together. Ending in the Teams call yesterday, as Kyle mentioned, just getting to the state of what's, I believe, on the dais in front of you. Yeah. So yeah, besides that, stormwater details, I can go into those as you guys see fit without hopefully putting anyone to sleep. But the only other two items that I believe were discussed at the November meeting was raising the perimeter fence an extra inch to go from 6 to 7. That's been reflected in the plan set. And then I can't remember which of you gentlemen brought it up regarding the performance guarantee.
Guilty.
There we go. Okay, I thought so. I spoke with Andrew about that afterwards, and the response that I can give is the performance guarantee for the project itself that is assigned at the time of building permit being pulled. The estimate for that really isn't something that needs to have, I think it was inflation was the word that you used, have that applied, but we have a decommissioning plan, and the life of this project is 25 years, something on that order. So the way that the state permit for our decommissioning permit that's received, the way that is fielded, it's similar to a stormwater recertification, if you're familiar with that, where every 3 years on the stormwater side, your permit is effectively reaffirmed. And in this case, it's every 5 years. The decommissioning plan and that decommissioning estimate is revisited, and say at some point during that period, price of steel goes way up, goes way down, labor costs, something contributing to that changes, then it would trigger a effectively redo or an update to that estimate. So that, I guess, is the way that they account for if something's dramatically different.
And the reason I brought it up, and we talked about it last time, is the Freeport solar ordinance is very specific in what it expects, and it's not consistent with what you just described. So there seems like maybe there's an inconsistency between the state and Freeport, and we'll need to figure out how to address that then. But I mean, we're obligated to go by the Freeport solar ordinance, which says it's the estimated cost plus inflation for the period of time, which, yes, is bizarre, but 25 years, who knows what inflation's going to be, but that's kind of how the Freeport ordinance lays it out. Yeah,
and that's how, that's how the first cost estimate to support the decommissioning performance guarantee will be laid out. And if it scales up, whenever that 5-year revisit occurs at the state level, that percentage will be applied based on you guys' ordinance. So if that's something that the state ends up kind of tilting their head at that time, then so be it. But
Have you seen the draft approval, Mike?
I have.
Okay, because what you're talking about is in there. Are you okay with the wording?
I am.
Are you okay with the wording?
So the condition of approval basically just references that the performance guarantee shall be established based on the standard that Fred acknowledged in our ordinance, which includes the 125% of the estimated cost plus the reasonable cost of inflation for the year. I I mean, the board, I guess, could amend it to make the condition of approval that the applicant step in every 5 years and provide an updated number.
Just want to see
Yeah,
that
no,
it ties to the ordinance, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this to obstruct getting to a yes, but there does seem to be an inconsistency with the ordinance, and if we can find a way around that, that's within our purview, all for it.
But
Oh, sorry.
if we approve it with this language, they just have to do it to Kyle's satisfaction, right?
Yeah, I mean, as proposed, it just says basically it's going to meet the ordinance standard. So staff can explore on the backside if there's different ways to get at that.
Yeah, I mean,
At the end of the day, the condition is requiring that they meet the standard. So if that's, the inflation is met in that first cost estimate right up front versus being updated along the way, we would have the ability to be a little flexible there, I think.
Cool with that?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little negotiation on your part after we're done with ours, but
Yeah, I think we'll just have to take a look at it.
it's okay with me.
Maybe a legal question.
Linda?
I have a question on letter F, 3F, about the stormwater comments from the peer review. Could we just add to the end of that as attached and make those comments attached to wherever it gets posted, if it's on the plan or something? Because right now it says it's, dated so-and-so, but I think it should be, these are specific things they were asking to make sure we're up to snuff on, and I think it should be indicated
Okay, so you just want the,
as attached.
yeah.
Specific reference to the letter.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just sort of a checkpoint, we seem to have jumped past and we're now just fine-tuning the language to approve, is that?
What, does anyone have any questions for the applicant on this, on the whole project?
I do not. You've been very helpful, actually, for the last, now 3 meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion? Is there any public comment? This is not a public hearing. Does anyone from the public care to be heard? Is there a motion?
I'll do it.
Excellent.
It's long. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board, revised.
Yeah, make
sorry.
sure you're looking at the revised.
Thank you. Approve the printed findings of fact and site plan review for Prout Road Solar LLC for a large solar farm along Prout Road at tax map 18, lot 46, application dated 10/29/25 through 12/11/25, to be built substantially as proposed, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport zoning ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, prior to construction, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Code Enforcement Department and Public Works Department. 3, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant do the following. A, provide an estimated cost breakdown for all site work proposed to be reviewed by the town peer review engineer. B, establish an inspection account in the amount to be determined for the inspection of site improvements by the town. C, establish a performance guarantee in the amount to cover the cost of all site work associated with the project in an amount to be determined in a form acceptable to the town attorney. The performance guarantee shall cover the cost of all site work. Also, along with the performance guarantee, a non-refundable administrative fee at the rate established by the Freeport Town Council be paid. D, the developer have a pre-construction meeting with the town planner. E, enter into a maintenance agreement for stormwater management systems with the town of Freeport to be recorded in the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds with yearly stormwater reporting to the town of Freeport being required. F, address the remaining stormwater comments provided by the town's peer review engineer in the Goral Palmer memo dated 12/12/2025. G, establish a decommissioning plan performance guarantee.
Sorry, Lynn, do you want to add Linda's
Yes.
language to the end of 3F there? So memo dated December 12th, 2025 as attached.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Address the remaining stormwater comments provided by the town peer review engineer in the Goral Palmer memo dated December 12, 2025, as per attached. G, establish a decommissioning plan performance guarantee in the amount identified in section 534.C.3.F.II. of the Freeport zoning ordinance. The performance guarantee shall be adjusted to reflect the cumulative inflation rate for the final project duration. Nothing more to add there.
Thank you.
4, the approval of site plan shall become void if construction of the site improvement is not initiated within 2 years of the date of such approval, unless such time limit is extended by the board that granted the original approval. 5, any appeals from a final decision of the project review board shall be taken only directly to Superior Court. In there.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there a second?
Second?
Good, thank you. Is any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented? Unanimous, Sharon? Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, now that it won't be misconstrued as trying to butter anybody up, this is my first project in this town, or this city, and I just want to compliment all of you on the process, from Kyle to all of you board members to Goral Palmer, who I've worked with down in York County, but you folks have a really good thing up here, so congratulations to you guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. And we got big shots in the room, so it's good you said that.
There we go. Not buttering anybody up.
And we're going to miss seeing you every month, too. Jeez.
Can you come back next month, too?
I would love more work in town.
Next agenda item is Domus LLC, 45 Depot Street, proposing 46 units on in a four-story multifamily building. Kyle will do the introduction on this, but I want to point out this is site plan and design review, but in a slightly unique situation. Building height is not before us for consideration in this part of town.
So I can elaborate on that. Sam, do you, okay, you got it. Yeah. So yeah, just a brief overview. This is conceptual plan meeting, so no decision or quite full application submission yet. This is similar to a project we just looked at in some senses, in that we're looking at a lot that is a majority paved parking lot, and the applicant is looking to redevelop it as a multifamily apartment building. This one's proposed at 4 stories. It should clarify that under the zoning ordinance, it would be 45 dwelling units. That guest unit that's proposed wouldn't technically meet the definition of a dwelling unit, but from a density standpoint, it's not really a concern or question, since we're in the Village Commercial 1 district here, and there's no density limit anyway. You're more limited just by the size of the building and how many units you can fit inside of it. From the, going through some highlights of the staff report, space standards, there aren't too many concerns here. What Ford alluded to, there are a couple things to mention with the building height. So I think as proposed in the application, the building is just shy of 55 feet. So that would be basically right up to the maximum allowance in the Village Commercial 1 district, which was recently increased specifically for lots on Depot Street not that long ago at the council level. Another thing to consider, which we mentioned on the project across the street, but it wasn't really applicable. It's a little more applicable with this one. When we're talking about design review, the council did adopt an exemption for the height standard in design review that projects along Depot Street don't need to consider, the board shouldn't consider building height in relation to the design review ordinance. So the only way that this project should be reviewed through the building height lens is through what's permitted and required in the zoning ordinance. So just when we get to that part about visual compatibility and the design of the building, the conversation around height should be limited to whether or not it meets that 55 feet and not a compatibility test of height of surrounding buildings. Land use, I noted in the staff report, maybe the applicant can touch on it, there was some discussion around, some of the units being affordable versus, what land use would that technically be classified as under our zoning ordinance. So we have two uses, multifamily dwellings, which is just your traditional, apartment building, versus an affordable housing development, which is a specific land use. The real bonus of being considered an affordable housing development is you receive a density bonus. Since there's no density restriction here, it's not really necessary for this project to maintain that land use designation. But maybe the applicant can provide some more details on whether units will be deed restricted, affordable, or not. Stormwater, the town does have an existing stormwater easement that runs through kind of the middle part of the parking area that will need to be relocated as part of this project. In addition, there was some preliminary plans shows a rain garden out back towards the back of the parking area that will address some quality concerns regarding stormwater that should improve the function of the site versus its current condition. Parking, it's at a 1-to-1 space per unit requirement, which would satisfy our zoning ordinance requirement for off-street parking requirements. Landscaping, the Village Commercial 1 does have a standard for the front setback space to be used for some landscaping or amenity space, which I think we'll probably see on some of the renderings and plans in the presentation. And then we're still waiting in the final submission for some more information, I think, on utilities and lighting and things like that. Oh, last thing to touch on, traffic. So the applicant did, even though it's conceptual, provide some trip generation estimation, some crash report data for some of the nearby intersections, and our peer review engineer did manage to take a look at some of that, and at this time there were no staff concerns with any of the traffic estimates as proposed. So that's pretty much it for staff comment. Happy to answer any questions, but turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is Tim Hebert. I'm one of the founders of Domus, joined tonight with my partner, Jack Soley. And here tonight with us are most of our team, Sam LaBelle from Acorn, Adam, our architect from KTA, Mitch Razor from Razor Landscape Design, and Nina Weil from Hebert Development. We have a strong team of experienced professionals, and we're here today very excited to deliver a project that's bringing affordability yet unsubsidized with no deed restrictions to a middle market home ownership to downtown Freeport. This project will help local businesses by delivering 34 single bedroom and 11 two-bedroom efficient home ownership units with no short-term rentals allowed, so all residents will be living, working, dining, and shopping in Freeport, further strengthening the community of Freeport itself. As you'll see from our design team in a few moments, our units are extremely high-quality layout and design with large windows, private balconies, community co-working space, and a guest suite that can be used by all residents for a nominal fee. The guest suite is a benefit to residents in support of their guests, as well as reducing HOA fees through the rental of the unit, so that all residents within the building will benefit and reduce their HOA costs. We truly believe in delivering quality product I want to touch a little bit on what Kyle was just talking about in terms of deed restrictions. Our unit designs are smaller in nature, but we like to think of them as very efficient. They have, all the units have all the amenities that you would need in any home. In-unit laundry, beautiful showers, tile, wood flooring, beautiful cabinets, granite countertops, all appliances included, all private balconies for every unit, and we're also trying to activate the street front and create a sense of community not only within the building, but within the buildings around. We're thrilled to see the project of 51 units from M&R Holdings gain approval recently, as both projects support the state of Maine's housing needs, as well as providing a mix of housing options that align with the strategic plan for downtown Freeport. By way of what Freeport has done to develop a strategic plan to bring more residential life to downtown, you're leading the way in the state of Maine. And we're excited to be in partnership here and try to present a project that will only strengthen your strategic vision. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Sam, who will run you through the civil engineer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Members of the board, my name is Sam LaBelle with Acorn Engineering. And so just running you through some of the site planning elements before we get into the building first. Thought it'd be helpful to start with a neighborhood map. We've got the project here outlined in red. Obviously, we're not too far away, just up Grove Street here, standing in Town Hall, Main Street flanking the left-hand side of the site, running up and down. The corner of Mill and Depot, where the recent 51-unit project was approved. And then, of course, we've got the Amtrak Downeaster flanking the right-hand side of our parcel. And so zooming in a couple frames, this in red is the proposed parcel that we have worked with the community center to carve off. It's about 29,000 square feet. Roughly 3/4 of an acre, or not quite. As you can see from the aerial image, it is essentially underutilized parking right now. And so as we kind of toggle to the proposed site plan, you can see the building footprint in this yellow hatch fits pretty neatly in that top bay of parking. And so we're able to place that footprint on some of the underutilized parking. We would be shifting the existing curb cut off Depot Street down the page. And, it's really a good opportunity to provide shared access with that single curb cut. So you can see that property line is intentionally drawn down the middle of that drive aisle. We've been in talks with the community center and providing, that easement agreement that outlines things like maintenance, access, snow plowing. And so anytime you can reduce curb cuts, the better, and that was an opportunity here, so we took it. You can see along Depot Street, along the frontage of the property, we would be rebuilding the public sidewalk and then providing a direct connection from the public right-of-way internally. As Kyle mentioned, we are proposing 45 parking spaces that would run with this building at a 1-to-1 ratio. The parking for the community center would remain within the shared access drive. We've really taken the opportunity to incorporate green space and open space where we can. The building footprint is what it is, but overall we'd have a net reduction of impervious area. And so, you can kind of see this patio that would flow out from the common space internally that Adam will get to. But it allows an indoor-outdoor connection right to Depot Street to help further activate it. Trash would be managed internally and contracted through with a private waste hauler. We are, in great proximity, as I mentioned, to the Downeaster station. We would fence off the property line connection, but through Depot Street, there would be a pretty easy walk to that station. Also trying to encourage, other multimodal transportation opportunities such as biking and walking. Obviously, the downtown location is a great opportunity for that. From a utilities perspective, we would be bringing in new services underground, including electric and communications. Those would be through underground services. As Kyle mentioned, we're also been working with DPW to outline realignment and reconstruction. There's a 36-inch storm drain that currently runs through the site, and so to pull that back from that building envelope and provide the necessary width for an easement, we've provided a redesign and continue to work with the town to come to an agreement on what that will look like. It's making good progress on that. And then from a stormwater perspective, we, in addition to reducing the impervious area, recognizing that we are in an urban impaired stream, Concord Gully that then flows to the Harrisseekit, we took that opportunity to incorporate a rain garden. And so this landscape schematic kind of gives you an idea for some of the planting. And then in this island here in the middle, proposed proprietary rain garden would be able to filter about 4,000 square feet of parking lot. Generally, parking lots have a higher pollutant loading than say a rooftop, and so really kind of trying to target where we're going to get the most bang for our buck there. And so not only the impervious, but the quantity and quality we're able to improve from a stormwater perspective. We are in receipt of the peer review comments as well as some of DPW's comments. Really no concerns, and look forward to responding to those formally within the next the next application that would be our final site plan application. And that's really it for some of the site planning. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but first I'll let Adam go over the building architecture.
All right. All right, so I'm Adam Wallace with Kaplan Thompson Architects, and I will walk you guys through the floor plans. So we've located the primary building entrance to just after you pull into the site to justify it towards the Depot Street end of the building, where we have in green here our primary entry lobby space. In addition to this space, we have our amenity space for the new owners. We have a lounge, couch TVs area with a little kitchenette. And then off of this amenity space, we have an exterior patio space with a little landscape screening fence from Depot Street that provides a nice little buffer from the active street. On the opposite end of the building, we have our rear entrance, where we're offering a bike wash or a dog wash station. And Sam mentioned that the exterior trash facility where it's not part of the conditioned space of the building, it's more an exterior enclosure along the back. We have individual private, has been mentioned, private exterior space. So on the ground floor, we have these patio spaces. These patio spaces highlighted in this light gray around the ground floor of the building. And then our typical upper floor, we have exterior deck spaces with cable railing we're showing. And on the fourth floor, we have lofted spaces. So we have these additional spaces that are provided with access via a circular stair up to the loft spaces, so they can be used for additional bedrooms, office space, and oops, for some reason it's not moving. But we're really excited about the way in which this building was essentially designed kind of from the inside out. So we focused heavily on, thank you, really refining the interior spaces of these units, giving them tons of daylight, where we do that by having larger glazing windows that are justified higher in the spaces so that the light can cast deep into those spaces. We've pushed our sleeping rooms, so our bedroom spaces are projecting out from the floor plan of where our living spaces are. And this move, extruded up throughout the building, provides the overall form, the massing of the building, where it breaks up the scale of the building itself by these vertical elements. And we do have a 3D model of the building that we could pass around. It's a little mini version of it. But so on the 4th floor, just to speak again to the lofted units, we've been referring to them as these roof pops. So it's not a 5-story building; it's a 4-story building, where we have these additional dormers that provide a little bit of variation to the roof form. We looked specifically at the ends of the buildings where it fronts on Depot Street, where you can kind of see there's a little notch. What we've decided to do is the 11 units on the 4th floor that are going to offer these additional loft spaces. We've decided that the 4 that surround the building on the 2 ends, that we were going to pull the dormered spaces back, so that what that does is it helps reduce the overall massing from the Depot Street facade, and it provides a little bit more visual interest to the top of the building form itself. We are planning on a fiber cement siding for the general body of the building. We're installing it as a lap siding, typical to a residential scale. However, we're proposing a specific pattern where we're doing a 4-inch and then another 4-inch exposure and then an 8-inch exposure course. And we do that because a building of this scale, it starts to feel a little too monotonous, and that increasing of the scale of the textured pattern of the facade helps balance with the actual size of the building. So it doesn't just feel like a typical vinyl-sided, larger, massive building. And then on the ground floor at the building entrance, we've decided to go with doesn't show up well here, but at the entrance, a vertical eastern white cedar, where it's more commonly a place where people are coming and going, and it's a natural material at the ground level, which we're really excited about. Lastly, I think, one more rendering here from a distance, but lastly, the thing that we're excited about on this one is the mechanical systems. The mechanical system design in this it's a fully electrified building where we have individual heat pumps in the units and ERVs, so it lends itself to having no exterior mechanical equipment. So there's no rooftop screening, there's nothing that you might see from a higher perspective up on Main Street, and we're pulling all that mechanical machinery into the building to prolong, building maintenance and primarily reduce the negative visual impact of seeing all of the stuff on the roof. So I think that's pretty much it for the building. If you guys have any other questions, we can do it.
Can you explain a little better? The heat pump units, you say, are within each of the apartments?
Yes.
Don't they need, maybe my understanding of heat pumps from my own heat pumps, it has to have a certain amount of flow in and out as far as, the fans and getting air. What are they in? Just like a little closet room, or how do they run that way?
They will be in the bathroom ceiling, and we do actually have a 3D model of that. I didn't bring that tonight, but
So it's, I could stop, it's like a ducted heat pump unit?
yes.
Okay, we have one of those too.
Yeah.
All right, I got it, sorry.
There's two ducts that go penetrate the exterior
All right,
wall in
that
each
makes
unit.
sense, that makes sense. And what about the water heaters? Are those also heat pump water heaters? Or are they external for some other type?
I think at this point, at this schematic level, where those will all be within the units, we're at a heat pump water heating level within the units at this point.
I'm just going to throw out a personal experience. A water heater, heat pump makes a huge amount of cold air when it's running and it needs a lot of space to run. We've come up with this on our own problem, and it makes the room that it's in freezing. I just have to tell you that. So I would consider where you put it, because it could take away a lot of the heat that comes into a room, and then you have to use your heat pumps more to
Right.
cool it down. And
Yeah, I think our mechanical engineer at the moment, we're looking at having a central water heating plant in the mechanical room because of that exact
yeah,
issue.
it probably is a lot better.
Yeah, yeah.
Then the other question I have is about the wording that you're saying there's no fifth story here. I kind of feel that that top level is, to me, it's a fifth story. I mean, I don't know whether it makes a difference to anybody, whether it's called a fifth story or a loft level. It seems like when you're counting levels, it is a fifth level. I don't think it makes any difference anymore because our footage
Yeah,
does
we
not matter.
don't go by stories at all in zoning ordinance as far as limits. I think it used to be a story-based height limit tied to it also having a specific height limit, but now it's just height. So whether it was 4 stories or 5 stories, the real metric to meet is that 55-foot limit.
And this is, the top of it is at 55 foot?
It's
54.9,
54.9.
I think.
For
is what-
9, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the things you mentioned in the staff report that we just want to clarify with code. Our height definition in our zoning ordinance is not the clearest thing that, you've ever read. It involves like taking points like 20 feet out of the building and getting the average grade and going up from there. So we just want to confirm with them that everything is good, but as it's proposed in the application right now, it's 54 feet 9 inches. So.
Will it be the tallest building in Freeport? I know it's on the lower level, but,
I'm not.
because before it was 30.
Well, so our height in the rest of the VC one is 45, but I
Yeah.
don't know if there could be other, I think the backside of the parking garage probably gets close to 50. So, I mean, it's in the ballpark of other.
Yeah, we estimated the height of the Nordic Theater, that corner, at the far corner, at between 46 and 48 feet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's like 48.
Yeah.
So there's also language in the definition for height that was another thing I wanted code to take a look at, where it talks about, or I discussed with them about, if only taking like 30% or something of a pitch or some sloped form on a roof. So it's not necessarily even the full height measuring to the utmost point of the roof. So, which I think would help gain an extra little bit there as well. So we'll verify that for the final meeting submission though.
As a very general comment, I'm sure you know this by now, but through the comprehensive planning process and through the political process at the council level, there's a lot of support for trying to bring more housing into the downtown area. I'm thrilled to see this project. Obviously, when we see your final plans, we'll be able to apply it to the specific, requirements. But you've come to the right community with this, and we look forward to seeing more.
Great, yeah.
So echo, yeah, it's exciting. It looks like a really cool building. Most of our responsibility is the outside of the building, really not drilling in. But I can't help but ask a question about storage for bikes and other equipment, skis, all those things that are there, and whether or not some of that could end up out on the balconies, or what covenants are in place to keep the exterior of the building looking tidy in coordination with all the other surrounding buildings.
We do have, we have a little bit of space. They're tight units, but in terms of people storing things on their bikes on the balconies, it's a possibility for sure. we like to think that maybe in the fourth floor units, you have space in the loft. There's a larger closet in those units. But we've also decided on this project to have the closets be an item that's purchased by the owner. So there is a little bit more space by not building
Sure.
walled closets with closet doors.
I just know my son, if he was in one of these, he'd have all sorts of stuff, and where am I
Yeah.
going to put it? And
Right.
we just not want it to end up outside where it's, an eyesore, I guess.
Yeah.
That's sort of the question.
We do have taller ceilings, so if he's creative, he could hang some things, maybe.
Thanks.
Dan?
I really am excited about it. I think it goes well with the other Depot Street plan. It also puts more demand on the city or the town to create those little after-hour markets that aren't here and other things that can revitalize the downtown part. I also think you did a great job of picking a snowy day for the picture, so we have the visualization of parking lot wasteland, and you've got a beautiful facility there. So I think it's a good move.
I like its location because as you said, we've already approved one housing project. And just adding to that wasteland on the other side will make that whole lower level of town, I think, feel more vibrant and welcoming.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Any other questions? I have a couple. When I first saw the inverted roof profile, I assumed you had interior roof drains, but now that I see the Barbie dream house up here, it looks, you have crickets?
Yes. Yeah.
So it just sheets off the roof?
Yeah, and we're pitching them to, if you can see in the roof plan, there are two roof drains where we have this middle section where we have a low slope roof section. So this lighter gray area will be pitching down into this area, and then these two crickets will be pitching water to this drain, and then
Can you show, which drain was that?
this circle. So that circle is one roof drain, and then there's another roof drain over here. And then on the edges of the building, so this is the Depot Street side, where we have those flat roof sections. Those we're going to be pitching to just typical scuppers and downspouts.
Okay. And on the rain gardens, what's the periodic maintenance required for those?
It would generally be with your springtime cleanup and landscaping. It's really not that much more of a maintenance activity than you would otherwise hire a landscaping crew to come each spring and kind of clean up, make any touch-ups to the mulching, and it's really low maintenance that way.
Okay, great.
I'd add on that one, the condition of approval we always have where we ask an applicant to enter it into the stormwater maintenance agreement. That's kind of that yearly periodic checkup to make sure things like that would be functioning well.
Can you talk a little bit about the internal trash storage?
Yeah, so the idea for that is that we will have those rolling toters. And it's not part of the thermal envelope, so that the door that you exit from the inside of the building, just there, you'll walk, basically you'll be outside, so it'll still be cladded with the vertical cedar, but it'll be ventilated to the exterior. That way there's no dumpster on site. Everything is within toters inside an enclosure. And then when the trash company comes to pick up, they can wheel. The idea is that they'll open a double sort of gate door and be able to wheel the toters out and discharge at that point. So, yeah.
Your affordability, I understand this is not technically affordable housing, but I saw in your, I think it was your purchase agreement, you have most of your units within a percentage of affordability. Can you explain how that works and how that carries forward from owner to owner over time?
Love that question. So let me address a couple things, and I'll get to that that have come up. So, in terms of the bike room and some of the other amenities that you might see in a building, we have myself and Jack Soley are partners in this. Jack has a lot of development experience, and our company's been doing construction in the housing market for many years. Our other partner is Avesta Housing, and so collectively, there's a lot of institutional knowledge about delivering housing to the market here in Maine. And one of the things that we started to realize over the last couple of years is that when we're building bike rooms in buildings, the only bikes that are getting stored in there are bikes that people are forgetting when they move out, and it just becomes a bike wasteland. And so, and if you are a biker, or your son has a nice bike, I'm sure he would attest to the fact that he might not leave his $2,000 road bike in a bike room that someone could cut a lock and steal it. And so we've found that space that people have been building into buildings, including gyms and things like that, they're nice to look at and think about, but they're not practical anymore. And for us, we've been thinking about this entire development process of developing and designing this building with extreme efficiency. And so that ties into even the question you guys asked about the roof system. We sat in multiple design meetings with our amazing engineers, and Adam is one of them, and looking at how the roof works and how it flows. We had the roof designed originally, and there was 4 roof trains with roof overflows. And I said, every time you put another roof train, it's going to cost another $5,000 to plumb it. And so we've intentionally, every portion, every nook and cranny of this building was well thought out and intentional in its design in order to be the most efficient building that we could build and design for this purpose, and getting to the point of affordability. So we don't want to build any space that doesn't get utilized or doesn't get purposefully bought and then resold. And so by creating these smaller units, and Jack Soley's building in Paris Terraces is a 23-unit condominium that KTA designed, I built, and that was how we all formed the initial relationship back in 2018. Those units were built and turned over on a building in 2019. Since then, a handful of those units have resold in the greatest economic boom in residential, increase in value in probably our history. And all of those units have sold for within 100% of area median income, and that's in downtown Portland. We built that building, and when I was building the building, we had to pull a couple people out of the elevator pit when we were building the foundation, and they were, drugged up, on fentanyl. Now that building is in a beautiful neighborhood, and it's a very vibrant community down there, and still with all of that increase, they've still seen, those rates only rise within the limits of the AMI. And so by having Avesta as part of one of our partners, they've studied AMIs for their career, and we've utilized those national and local state regulations to determine that what the area median income is of Freeport in particular. And our for sale rates, for these units are going to be below 300 on some of the first floor units to start, which is well below 100% of area median income in the area. And so, we're pretty excited about that. How it stays that way is, the units are only so big. And so what we found through this is that they appreciate in value, and people see the appreciation, which is the great part of home ownership. Yet they only appreciate so much. It's a price per square foot. And so they're not just going to all of a sudden go and sell for $1 million. It's just not practical. We're never going to get to that point within a 5 or 10 year cycle of all of this. So it builds in affordability and perpetuity by the nature of the design.
Yeah, and this is not part of our review, but I'd still like to understand it.
Yeah.
It seems like you have a mechanism for the first owner that keeps the price down for them, but does that carry to the second owner?
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, if I'll just step up. And I appreciate your question, Ford, because it's the question that we've gotten on multiple projects. So
You need to introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Jack Soley from Domus as well. And so We've been asked this multiple times when we've done projects, is how do you ensure affordability long-term? Because the first-time sale, we get it. You're trying to sell at a price point which is approachable, which is accessible to many people. But second and third sales, how do you do that? As Tim talked about, these are they're small units. I don't like to use micro as a word because it's derogatory for some people, but they're very small units. And as Tim suggested, when you have a 500 square foot unit, you don't find buyers in that price point that are looking for people who want to buy a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 unit want size. A 500 square foot unit doesn't appeal to them. So it was a philosophical approach by building small units that would allow affordability. We didn't know if it was going to work, to be honest. We've now done this. We've done this in Portland, as Tim said, in a period of the greatest economic growth in the history of the city of Portland. We built units, we sold the original ones, as Tim said, in 2019 for $215,000 because our target was maximum of 120% of area median income. 9 of those units have resold, which is also a good indication that people hold on to the units. They don't want to resell them, frankly, because they have nothing else they can buy in Portland at that price point. Of those 9 units, 8 of them have resold below the 120% AMI. There is one outlier that sold for 121% of area median income. And again, it's the size that's driving the price point. People are not going to pay $800 per square foot for a unit. So even if they did, at 500 square feet, that's $400,000. People typically pay somewhere in the $600 range per square foot for unit. That brings us, our target price point is around $300,000. We don't know if we're going to hit it because tariffs and other prices have increased dramatically since we've been building these projects. That's our goal. Those 34 units, our goal is to sell them below 120 AMI, ideally at 110% of area median income. The top floor 11 units, those are market rate units. Those will subsidize, that's where we'll make the profit, on 11 units on the top floor. We don't make profit on the other 34 units. And it's a mission-driven company. That's what Domus is all about. And I would encourage you to look at the website, domusdwellings.com. So ideally, those top units will sell well, and they'll sell on a higher price point, somewhere in the $400,000 range. They'll be very profitable. That will cover the expenses for the other units that will essentially break even on. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Seems like a very well thought out project. Thanks.
I may have misunderstood. Did someone say that there were some 2 bedrooms? Is that what you're calling the 1 bedroom with loft on the top floor? Okay. Because all of them are marked as 1 bedrooms.
Sorry, yeah, the 4th floor, they're mislabeled, so those would be,
Okay, thank
those
you.
would be the 2-bedroom units.
So the entire top floor are the 2-bedroom units?
All except for...
1 bedroom plus loft?
There's
No.
the unit 402 here. This is this would be just, because this does not have a loft, essentially, so it's still a 1-bedroom.
Okay, I see. All right, yes, I just saw 1 bedrooms everywhere, but, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? This is not a formal public hearing. We'll have that at your next appearance, but we do welcome questions and comments from the public if anyone cares to speak.
Tawny Whitney, Freeport Economic Development and Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to wear both hats because both hats really matter tonight. First, what an incredible team. You know, to be here a few years after another incident, I'm just so honored to have this team here. And I've had the privilege of actually touring the buildings, and they are all very similar because as they have done things to make them affordable, I've learned through your process that you can't go changing this and that along the way. You kind of have to stick to the plan and keep that 3D model just the way it is. And so it's just been a privilege to have this team and to tour the spaces. And when you do tour the space, it's remarkable. I go from my great big house to one of these units and go, what more do I need? Everything's here. And I like the way you described it as a luxury shrunken, you know, and I felt that in the units. And we probably had 18 people in our tour when I went to see it, and it felt spacious. Yes, we were on the 4th floor, and yeah, I climbed up to go to the loft, but it felt very spacious, and a lot of that had to do with, like you were saying, with the light that was able to come in. It's remarkable how much light can make a place feel so positive. And of course, now we go back to the downtown revision. And in the downtown revision, when we were conducting that, we interviewed 13 different consultants. And all 13 consultants had only one thing in common. And that thing was that if you wanted to have a vibrant downtown, you needed people living in it. And at one point in time, we actually had 1,500 people living in proper downtown. And, you know, there's been a mix of reasons why that's changed, mostly due to fires, but we now have 300. So, you know, to get back to that vibrancy, this was by far what we've been hoping for and waiting for. So it's also my pleasure to represent the business community because I have to say that they're waiting. You know, when they heard about the downtown revision and what it could do for our community, they invested in Freeport. They stayed in Freeport, and it's made a huge difference. We have property owners taking percentage rents, waiting for the kind of energy to return to Freeport. And I also want to say, like, as my residential hat, I also live in Freeport. We as residents want this. You know, we want the vibrancy of downtown. I'm so proud when I get to tour and talk about where I live and the business community that I represent. I am so proud to say that I represent Freeport, Maine. So as a resident, I want the vibrancy back. I want to look at those old photographs that I see where Freeport is just, you know, bustling. And so I also, as a resident, say that I'm very excited and thank you for coming to Freeport.
Thanks, Tawny.
Can I see your building from 295 in Portland?
Oh, the Paris Terraces building, yes,
Yes.
Aha, because it looked familiar.
Right.
Yes, it's off.
Thanks,
It looks it's funny now, after many years, it looks quite small, nestled in. You can spot it, it's hard, but you can see it from 295, yes.
Okay, thank you. I can't tell you. I can't explain. I just know I've seen a building that looks like the one they're building.
Hi, John.
Good evening. My name is John Egan, Freeport resident and a member of the Town Council's Housing Committee for the past 2 years. We're in a bit of a pause right now and actually kicking back and applauding that we finally have some projects now that we've been talking about for a long time. So I'm going to just focus on 3 things. One, well, even before I get to my 3 things, I'm 100% in favor of seeing this project come forward and bringing downtown homeownership to Depot Street. The 3 things I want to focus on are the Housing Committee spent a lot of time looking at different models around different communities in different parts of the state, talking to developers, and really digging into what our plans, both our comprehensive plan and our downtown revision plan, we're focused on and we're looking for. And this project, along with the one that you approved 2 weeks ago at the other end of Depot Street, are precisely what the community has been asking for. This is precisely what the comprehensive plan and the downtown revision plan identified, and it's what our community identified when we had various public charrettes. If you remember those different types of buildings that were put up using the images on Depot Street, the 4- and 5-story building got the most yellow stickies. So this is a clear example of what the community has been waiting for, and you just heard it's what the business community has been waiting for its workforce. Second, this is a different model for Freeport. It's a different model. It doesn't have to be something that we need to be afraid of. It's a different model because we haven't seen it before. We also haven't seen somebody come forward with 42 units of home ownership opportunity for young people in our community to live downtown and contribute to our community. So it's an excellent example of thinking a little bit beyond our traditional views and taking an example of what good design, and you just heard lots of really good reasons of how much thought they put into this design, can actually change a downtown community. Our downtown is not that big. 42 homeowners are going to make a huge difference in the life downtown, both economically and socially. And then lastly, this is not a moonshot. This is not a way out idea that people have been sort of down in the basement skunk working. This is going to be the 3rd one. They've built this before. I know something about the team that's put it together because I work in affordable housing in my day job. And they have done exactly what you want a developer who's focused on solving problems to do, which is to optimize and figure out and refine and refine and refine. And you just heard Tim give a couple examples of that process. These folks are really good at what they do. They know how to do it. And I'm extremely ecstatic that they've chosen Freeport to come to. And so thanks for the comments already about choosing the right community. I couldn't agree more. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
We have online.
Anybody else in the room with a comment? Someone online?
Yep. Stephanie, I'm going to allow you to talk. Should be good.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Millette, and I live about 75 feet over the train track from where the fence will be for this property. And just wanted to put that we have in my condo association and many of the others, because we have been networking over the year. We've been really excited that in anticipation of construction coming downtown, we have always known it would happen, especially participating in comprehensive planning processes. And we appreciate that this particular plan has balconies up and down the side that will face us. So for the first time in over a decade of living here, when we look out our back windows, we will not see the quote-unquote ghost land of parking lot, but we will see signs of human life. So we welcome the neighbors and just wanted to voice our support.
Thank you. Anything else? Next meeting, you folks are interested in coming back in January?
Absolutely. So I think we have a week to
Yeah, so that's,
Yeah, just a scheduling note, the January meeting will be the 21st. The submission deadline for that meeting will be New Year's Eve. So.
and you know how,
Happy holidays.
you know how this works. You submit, we review, you have to respond, we review, you may have to respond again. Goral Palmer, our reviewing engineers, will keep up with the process, but please move your side of the table as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and honestly, part of our submission, we really went above and beyond what you'd find in a typical sketch plan, and so we feel like we've got a good jump start on that, and we've already got a round from Goral Palmer, and we'll keep the process moving, so appreciate that.
Great, because it will definitely be a tight timeline.
Yeah.
So the meeting is January 19th and.
21st.
Pardon me?
21st.
21. January 21, and that will be a formal public hearing and then possible final consideration, see what issues come up.
Relative to moving fast, you mentioned that you have some deals going with community services to get that property, I don't know whether it's a switch or whatever, but is that something that you're going to have to also make certain of?
I can speak to that. So it's not Freeport Community Services, it's Freeport Lot LLC, which is purchasing the land, and then we're subdividing that portion. And then Freeport Lot will be donating the remainder of the parking lot to Freeport Community Services. So it sounds complicated, and so it actually is, because there's cross easements, and we've been working with Freeport Lot. We're meeting with Freeport Community Services on the 13th to hammer out those easements. But it is definitely a process, and we're definitely, honestly, what we're trying to do is create that whole parcel from Freeport Community Services over to us to work in harmony together. Because they have a community room that our residents hopefully will be able to use, and so that's what we've toured their community room, and they've offered that as a possibility for this building as well, because they have cooking facilities there. It's just being another great amenity space. And so we're trying to do this in coordination, and I would almost say in partnership with Freeport Community Services. So we haven't had that meeting yet because we've tried to work out the details of Freeport Lot LLC. There happens to be the same board members from Freeport Lot to Freeport Community Services, so it's sort of all in the same family, but that's the goal. And it's so that, so somebody from this building can walk over to Freeport Community Services and back and forth and then go to the train from there. It would be a shame if they were all segregated, so that's why we're trying to work together in harmony with each other.
You anticipate having all these deals set before our next meeting?
Correct, yes. We have the Freeport lot cross surveys, we've already been drafted, we've gone through, they have all of those surveys and the cross easements, and so those have already been worked out. They're actually working on approving those now, but then it's a matter of us going to Freeport Community Services.
And I would just add, and we can certainly talk more with Kyle offline, but if they, if for whatever reason, whether it's the holiday break, that they're not executed in time, I would say it's not uncommon for that to be a condition of approval, especially where it is a private, a private matter. And so I would, should any one of those not come to fruition or be executed by that hearing date, hopefully that could then roll into a condition of approval prior to building permit or something like that. So we can provide an update on where those easements and all the right title interests stand when we come back.
Can you?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify on that, the board has approved shared access easements. I'm looking back at past findings that this board has made. I mean, those have routinely been made conditions of approval. There might be a draft agreement, but not finalized and executed yet. Right title and interest in an application can be done through a purchase and sale agreement or an optional agreement. It doesn't necessarily have to be done by the application, but yeah, we can wait to see where the application stands when it comes in.
Even if it's a letter of intent, something, because if it didn't happen for some glitch of whatever, then you'd have to, go do some further transfers or whatever. But I just, if we're going to think of doing an approval in January, it'd be nice to have the whole shebang put together with the right paperwork.
It's an excellent point. And so I will say that we have designed this site so that if we don't actually get those cross easements from Freeport Community Services, this site can act on its own. We just feel it'd be a shame not to coordinate with Freeport Community Services. And so that's the goal. But it actually can work. We have a single drive aisle. But the idea is that hopefully you could drive in that aisle and then maybe come out at Freeport Community Services, so you can come in the front and then, and then come through and all the way across and back out. And that's our goal, but if it doesn't work, then, so be it. We still have our drive aisle and it can happen independent.
Just one more general question. So assuming we get yes in January, what's your vision in terms of your build and when these units are available for purchase? Especially considering there's another building going up right next door, right? So.
Yeah, great question. Actually, I myself as well as Nina have been in touch with Dan Bacon from M&R Holdings as of recently, talking about these two buildings coming out of the ground at relatively the same time. So Hebert Construction currently is planning that this building would start in April of this coming year. And it's about a 14-month schedule for construction.
Very exciting.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your thoughts.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is Dennis and Ruth Daniel, 19 South Street.
Thank you. All right, so just a quick overview of, oh, yeah.
I was going to put it in my stocking.
All right, so quick overview. The application up next is for a design review certificate. The applicants who are here in front of us today, they have a single-family home on South Street. Next to the home now is an existing detached single-story garage. They're looking to demo the existing garage and replace with a new two-story garage. As I talked about in the staff report, the applicant is proposing to use the first floor for, I think, vehicle storage and other things, and then the second story for an accessory dwelling unit. That process all goes through code department and is permitted through building permits, so we're not really looking at the land use here. We're just looking at it from a design review certificate lens. The sketch that was included in the application proposes a garage with a white vinyl siding, and roof shingles to match the existing home. I think the windows as well were designed based off of, to match and kind of follow the guidelines of the existing home. We are looking at a Class C building here in our design review district. So when we look at those, we're looking at kind of general compatibility with the surrounding scale and design of the street and nearby areas, but not necessarily matching any particular specific style. So I think overall it's a fairly simple redevelopment of the garage, but I'm happy to answer any questions if the board has any. Otherwise, I'd just turn it over to the applicant for any quick overview they want to give.
Well, we are by no means as large as that.
It's a garage.
We're going to be staring at it. We're on South Street. So when we look through Oak Leaf Terrace, the next thing is them. So we're going to see that happen and hear it at the same time we're hoping that we'll be building ours. We are just wanting to have, we want to be able to age in place. So by having this addition of room above the garage, one of our children can live there and take care of mom and dad.
I like that.
Yeah. And they've agreed to it already. So we're hoping that that's our future. And they'll be residents of Freeport, downtown. So that's that. And basically, we're trying to stick with the parameters of what we need to have based on our neighbors and height requirements. We're nowhere near the height requirement, trying to keep the roof low, trying not to make it look so wow. Yeah. But the garage that's there right now is in bad shape. It needs to be gone. It needs to be replaced.
So I got the existing garage up there.
Yeah, you can see.
In the application, and then the sketch here.
Yeah, basic, trying to keep it as low, but still 2 stories.
3.5. I wouldn't call it 2 stories. I'd say
Yeah,
story and a half.
basically. Yeah.
But the style is similar.
The garage right now is 12.5 by 25. And the design we have is to go
18 by 44.
by 44.
So technically, we can park 2 cars in if we need to.
Right now, the vehicle we have just gets in there and has about a foot to play with.
Barely open the doors.
When we shut the door.
Well, we have stuff in there, so, you can't function as a good garage.
No.
Yeah. So by making it wider, it'll definitely give us storage space and parking without having to. And we're thinking in the future, in case, we are handicapped or anything like that, we're trying to make sure that, that the garage is wide enough for us to get in and out of a vehicle and that kind of thing. And we're thinking of the apartment above, if that's where we end up, that it has, the wide doors, the ability to get up there, which would probably involve an elevator, that kind of thing. But we're not even, we're not there yet. But
Or
we're
a
going to have
staircase
that has, we do have a staircase, and it's interior, it's inside.
And it's straight.
Yeah, it's straight.
You can get
Yes.
it.
Get up there, can get something to get us up there. And so that, because it will be smaller than our home. So, and, be easily accessible, shower, going in, all those things. So we're thinking of our future. I mean, we're both in our 70s. We want to make it to our 100.
For you.
But we also are realistic and know that, something can happen in the future. And we just want to make sure we're prepared.
I, for one, am very glad you're planning on staying in Freeport. Thank you for that.
Oh, God, yes.
One question, and I'm sorry, I may have missed it when I was going through the materials, but what I didn't see is the relationship of this site to the property lines. Was that in here?
So setbacks would fall under zoning. So the reason it's not in here is because that would be part of their building permit process. It's a little weird because as an accessory structure, that zoning dimensional space and bulk aspect isn't getting reviewed. So I'm pretty sure, talking with code, they've looked at it, that it meets all setback requirements and it's fine. But if that was an issue where it was a foot too close or something, it would be caught at that level. So that's why it's not included.
Well, that would
Yeah, and we
explain
have a pretty good-sized lot for where we are at. We actually have accessibility to Dennison Street behind us. I think we're the only lot that is south and Dennison. Everybody else is either Dennison or south. And the neighbor next to us doesn't access Dennison. They access the property behind Dennison, it's like a dead end, and that property stops them from being on Dennison. So we're the only one.
Did you say you were taking it from existing 12 feet wide?
12 and a half feet wide
You're gonna
to,
go to
we'd like to go 18, but we're also flexible. Yes, yeah, just to be able to be able to put storage on both sides of the car, that kind of thing.
Well, the existing garage looks very
Sad.
small and short in relation to
Sad.
the house.
Yeah.
So this may complement the house better.
I think it'll probably end up being about the same size as the house, because it is a two-story home. And maybe a little bit more possibly, but right in that range.
Lift all boats, that's what I think.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. Right now, yeah, your exact words were squat.
And the sides are kind of, it's kind of splitting. If you really look at it, you can tell it's kind of going out. Like, we got to get rid of that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think it looks great and meets all the code requirements as far as I can
Good.
tell. And how thoughtful of you to think about your future like this. too.
And we're flexible with, if we have to change it, go down to 16 and go a little longer, we're flexible, whatever works on the property the best way without, code, the parameters, our neighbors and things like that. Yeah, we're definitely flexible with wherever the placement needs to be, and that's where it's going to go.
Thank you. This is not a public hearing, but we always welcome public comments. Anyone have any comments? Any other questions from the board? Is there a motion?
I'd be happy to do it. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Dennis and Ruth Daniel for the construction of a new two-story garage at 19 South Street, Tax Assessor Map 10, Lot 2, application dated through December 1st, 2025, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. And 2, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Office.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, Sharon. Thank you.
Where do we go from here?
That would be
Enforcement office.
check in with codes
Okay.
for the building permit. Yep.
Okay,
I'll let him know in the morning that it was approved here.
okay,
And
thank
I
you.
have to say, I'm so excited about this project that we were talking about earlier, just to know that downtown, because it really went down. We lost so many restaurants, and to hope that that brings them back, and, yeah, we're so excited.
Good to see you come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last agenda item is Kyle's going to, through a series of different meetings, when we have a light enough agenda, Kyle's going to zoom in on certain aspects of the ordinance tonight. And tonight, you're just going to kind of do the, touch on from the highest level, right?
Yeah, so let me just try to pull it up real quick.
Just while he's doing that, you're in review for it? I think we, just about everything that came forward, we
Yeah, that's
approved
right.
or supported.
You're the one who's done the data analysis for us.
Well,
in
I
the
didn't
past.
do it this
I
year,
think
but, because I think it's 100%. So,
Yeah.
Well done.
Any views from the planning board?
I just want to see what you think about the design ordinance. So, I don't know if
It's
you're going
coming.
to have discussion, the design ordinance that you're going to talk about now. I'll say one other thing about that.
Oh, this isn't going to be design review, so.
Yeah, we don't have design, we're not doing design review yet.
We haven't seen it.
So what are you talking, it's not the, where are you going? What's your next agenda item?
It's just a general kind of educational overview, like PRB Basics 101. Yeah, so an info exchange at the beginning. I mentioned to the board that when design review goes back to planning board and we have the graphics filled in from the consultant, that we'd be inviting.
Okay, I thought there was going to be a little discussion about that, and I want you guys' input on it and make sure that what we're doing accords with what you want.
Yeah.
So, but that's.
Well, thanks for the work you're doing.
Because we're a month away from.
Yeah, we need the graphics.
And I'll just say one other thing about the project we just saw.
Mitch, Tom's going to ask you to.
Oh, really? Okay. I mean, I'll do it. You know, there is a lot of discussion in town about the need for affordable housing. And there's a lot of what does that mean and who and how. And this is the way how. And so many other, you know, most other ways involve somebody paying somebody else paying. And that's fine if you can figure out who else is paying. But this is what I always think is Freeport's problem is a lack of a type of housing. You know, the way to get more affordable housing is to build more affordable stuff. So that is a good answer.
Thanks, Mitch.
All right, I'll see you guys when you take up the design ordinance.
Yep, we'll let you know.
And don't worry, we've been so,
One more time.
we've been so agreeable up here that we'll make sure to bring all our negative thoughts to that discussion.
It's threading the needle there.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, yeah.
I think it's better. It's, you know, I think we're getting somewhere. So I just want to see that you do too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sophie, you got anything for us?
Just my deep appreciation, all of the hard work that went into getting everything ready for you tonight. I was just so happy that everything went smoothly and you guys gave such thoughtful feedback. It was great to watch. Thanks.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah, as Ford mentioned, we're going to start doing, you know, these kind of informational presentations. Try not to keep any one of them too long, so split them up into kind of different presentations that I can throw in whenever we have some time on an agenda. So this first one, I wanted to just touch on, right, the PRB, because of kind of our unique nature here where we have two separate boards, the PRB is not as directly tied into the policy side of things as maybe some other communities where you have a planning board that's doing development review and policy work. So touch on the kind of policy process and how some of the ordinances and changes to those ordinances happens and takes place, because that's the standards that you all end up using to actually review projects. And then from there, touch on some of the specific ordinances at a high level that the board looks at and how, you know, they sort of work together with a project. And then follow-up presentations later down the line, we can dive into kind of specific standards and things that we look at under each one of those ordinances and review types. So generally, land use policy, right, it's kind of one of the major parts of the planning department. You have, you know, the policy side and development review side. You know, whereas here we're looking at more specific projects usually. The land use policy side is generally bigger picture conversations, you know, across large parts of the town. It's not thinking at things, you know, well, like what are the impacts of this one specific project, but on a general policy question as a whole and how that might impact an entire geographical area or the whole town. But as I said, that policy creates the framework that this board uses during project reviews. So, you know, it has a direct implication, and it's not always easy to see when we look at it at the policy level, at a high level and big picture level, how it'll actually play out when individual projects come forward. You know, we notice things all the time at the staff level, or the board notices it when a specific project comes through that, you know, it just might not have been something that came up during the policy discussion, because it's hard to think of every little thing, you know, when you're having those talks. So these policy discussions generally start at the planning board level, and then ultimately end up in front of town council for any actual decisions. So drivers of land use policy change comes, you know, it comes from a few different places, right? You know, we have our long-term planning documents, so things like our comprehensive plan. Then we have our, you know, kind of planning studies and reports, things like the downtown vision plan or the climate action plan, right? All of that. You're going to get a handful of recommendations out of all of these documents that impact zoning. It could recommend rezoning or changes to density or changes to a performance standard to, you know, increase environmental protection standards under, you know, development projects or, you know, whatever it is. But generally, these documents are what guides the planning board's work plan and how they prioritize things. Another driver would be our actual boards and bodies, so the council and the project review board. So sometimes there could be an issue that pops up in the community that makes its way to council, and the council forwards, you know, a question, a policy question onto the planning board for discussion or to come up with a new ordinance. The project review board, through our reviews, comes up with things. So I think most recently, like the campground change, right? That was unclear. So we forwarded that along to the planning board to revise that ordinance. State law is another big one. I mentioned it earlier that the planning board right now, we just did an overview of new housing law from the state that's coming down. So oftentimes there's updates at the state level that filter down to us, and we have to comply, and it doesn't necessarily matter, you know, what the town thinks, or, you know, we just have to go through the process of updating our ordinances to comply with whatever new state law. So and this fairly regularly will happen around things like housing or stormwater. Since we're an MS4 community through DEP, you know, our permit is tied to that, and they'll occasionally have new best practices regarding stormwater that we have to keep up with and update our ordinances for. One of those low impact development, you know, we'll probably see in the next year, and then when we start, you know, doing development review projects after that, we'll have to bring that low impact development standards into play at the review level. So things like that, you know, start at the state, work its way down to the policy side at the municipal level, but then finalize kind of being acted on at the development review stage. And then property owners. We have a provision in our ordinance that applicants can bring forward applications for zoning changes, either to the map itself, you know, where they're changing a zoning district, or a text change. So I think this board has seen the result of that a number of times, where people, you know, want to introduce a new overlay zone so they can do a new activity, or a business wants to change some standard to allow them to expand, or someone wants to rezone so they can do something on a property. You know, Maine Beer Company is probably the most recent example, where they went through the planning board and council process to rezone their abutting parcel, and then they came to the PRB for that parking addition. So the general process, though, is, you know, things will start at the planning board level. Typically, you know, once we have a topic in hand that we're looking at addressing, the planning board, with the help of staff, will draft an amendment. The board will consider, you know, whatever the land use implications are of that change. You know, if we're talking about housing density increases, is it going to put a strain on water and sewer infrastructure or traffic, or, you know, things like that. Obviously, again, we're not looking at project-specific things, but in general, like, what are the, you know, should the town start looking at bigger picture infrastructure changes in an area if we're going to make changes to that area? The planning board, anytime they're making changes to zoning ordinance or one of these other related ordinances, there's always a public hearing and public comment involved. And ultimately, what the planning board is sending to town council is a recommendation whether the proposed policy is consistent with the comprehensive plan or not. That's the real test that every policy change has to go through. The whole point, we adopt a comprehensive plan. It's a long-range document. State law requires that the zoning changes any community makes are tied to that comprehensive plan, and you're not doing something counter to that. So then from there, ultimately, the town council receives that planning board recommendation. They have a discussion around it. If there are changes, it would go back to planning board. Typically here, I think council generally trusts the work that the planning board has done. Council will usually hold 2 meetings to set a public hearing, have the public hearing, and then they make their final decision and usually adopt the ordinance amendment.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just kind of technically, if a change is proposed and there's a public hearing either through planning or town council, if we as individuals want to make comment, would that be considered a conflict of interest because we sit on this board that would have to implement those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a grayish area. I would always recommend it. I mean, my past experience is if board or committee members in a town want to comment on something else, that they should identify themselves, that they're commenting as an individual and as a resident or from that perspective, not speaking on behalf of the entire board. So
Well,
it's,
I know.
yeah.
I mean, I don't think any one of us would do that,
Yep.
but we are
Well, I've had it
a
happen
person
before.
and we are a
Not here.
board member,
Yep.
so we have to split ourselves at the time to
Yep.
do those. But it would still be all right to make a comment as the individual.
Yeah, I think so. So, frequently used ordinances. So now getting into more PRB specific things. So our probably most used ordinances, right, are zoning for sure. This is probably the number one. Our design review ordinance, subdivision, and shoreland zoning. So in our code of ordinances, these are under 4 different chapters. But as we'll see, they have some, general overlap, with individual projects.
And Kyle, am I correct that under 3 of those, zoning generally, but also subdivision and shoreland zoning, the state gives us minimums that we need to have for structure, and we can go further?
Yeah.
But this is driven by the state.
Subdivision and shoreland zoning in particular really stem from the state. I mean, the definition of subdivision comes from the state, and there's a whole chapter of state law around what subdivision is and isn't. And if you look in our subdivision ordinance at the standards, there's the state standard and then the local standard kind of for each topic. And shoreland zoning, is administered through DEP. So any change we make to their shoreland zoning ordinance, we can propose a change and we can adopt it, but we have to send it to DEP for final sign off that it's okay to actually make that change. But in general, what all of these ordinances are doing and providing, there's always going to be a definition section. There's always going to be an applicability section. They provide standards for whatever type of review you're looking at. And then there's some procedural aspect where it's looking at, timeline, submission requirements, and all of that stuff. So, again, though there's going to be overlap between some of them, subdivision and site plan or design review and site plan, but they also do have their own kind of nuances and differences. So the zoning ordinance, at a kind of baseline level, probably the biggest thing that the zoning ordinance does is it assigns zoning districts to the entire town. So you get these different zoning districts, which have different allowable land uses, has different space and bulk requirements, and they all have, their own unique district standards that could be around, landscaping or whatever. In addition to that, each of these individual zoning districts, you also have a general article in the zoning ordinance that talks about performance standards. And these are standards, these are broader standards that will apply more across the board to, anywhere in town, or it'll apply to a specific type of project. So it'll be, very specific standards for solar projects or affordable housing projects, or, it'll be talking about nuisance concerns or environmental impacts. So that's where you'll find our parking standards and our stormwater standards and all of that stuff. Question?
Nuisance brought to mind. Has a blight ordinance ever been discussed in Freeport?
I don't know. Not while I've been here.
Very good question.
Yep. So right now, when I say nuisance in there, it's things like lighting, noise.
Noise, yeah.
You'll see all that sort of stuff, but.
Just, well, I don't want to say any more, but I.
It's an issue.
In the town I lived in before, there was one, and there were, so that if people felt there was something that, well, I can use one example, I think. The north entrance at 24 off Route 1, heading up the thruway, a group came and they wanted to tear down the old barn and house that was there, and they were going to put in storage space for contractors. Do you remember it butted up against 95? 295?
Whitney.
Whitney. And it's things are falling. It's a blight, if you're talking about how people view Freeport.
Yeah.
So, and it's been there for years. So clearly they're not moving ahead, but it's just something I'm putting out there.
It's a subset of Maine the way life should be.
Yes,
You can turn your snowmobile into a planter if you want to.
It may be interesting for another purpose too, because those types of ordinances are very, very helpful in securing CDBG funding. Because one of the national objectives.
What kind of funding did you say?
Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. One of the national objectives is the alleviation of blight, of slum and blighting conditions. So when you have such an ordinance and you designate an area as being qualifying, you now have something that definitionally meets the CDBG funding requirement. So it's actually a nice thing for a community to have. It's how you use it and how often you use it's up to the political body, but it would be worth consideration.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the town's ever considered it. I can check, though. I can ask around. But yeah, so, we have individual zoning districts with, that kind of touch more on use and dimensional requirements. Then you have your performance standards. And then the other big thing relevant to us under the zoning ordinance is that this is where our site plan review process is outlined. So the zoning ordinance, right, all of those land uses identified in each of the zoning districts will either be allowed through a permit through the code office, or for any larger scale projects, they're going to trigger site plan review. And then, so whether it's a building permit or a site plan review application, you would then go to the relevant performance standards to kind of regulate and review whether that project meets the standards.
Yeah, at a tactical level, as the PRB, where is the line between what is approvable through the building permit process versus what it is that has to come to this board?
Yeah. So each of the zoning districts will be a little different. So if you look up here, this is, I don't know what zone we're in here. In town, this district being, I think this is one of the village districts, but all of the districts are basically set up like this. So they have their permitted uses. So in this case, in this district, single family homes and duplexes are what you can get a building permit for. Then everything under here, starting at 4, are the uses subject to site plan review. So, multifamily, commercial schools, everything, this list would go on, it just got cut off here. But so the individual zoning districts are where you would go to figure out what requires a building permit and what requires site plan. And if it's not listed here, then it generally just wouldn't be an allowable use. So, if you go to a village district and, you don't see the fact that manufacturing is listed there, it means that, manufacturing is not allowed in that zone.
So like the instance tonight, my question about the setback issue, that was because that was an allowable use in that area. It was a building permit, a code compliance issue, basically, as opposed to something that we would deal with here.
Yeah. So accessory dwelling units are one of those things that have a specific section in the performance standards. And I think in there it talks about that accessory dwelling units are permitted through a building permit. All accessory structures, they would be accessory to, like a single family home or a duplex. Those would just be building permits. So then, you would go over here to the space standards of that zone, and you'd see whatever the setback was, but yeah, so an accessory dwelling unit would fall under a building permit, and
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
but let's say it was an accessory structure for a apartment building, right? Which an apartment building would require site plan. Any change to a site plan is going to be an amendment to that site plan and would require site plan amendment approval. Now, whether, we'll get into this at a follow-up presentation when we dive deeper into site plan, but a site plan amendment could trigger review by the board, or it could fall under a staff review, but the staff review would be my review, not code review through building permit. But yeah, so each of the zoning districts generally follows this pattern of, what uses are allowed, the space standards. This is where you would come to find your density requirements, your setbacks, how much, impervious coverage you're allowed on the lot, building height, all of those things are in each of those sections. And then you have these general district standards. There's some overlap here. So, if you do come here, let's say we have a project and you want to know about the landscaping or buffering requirement for that project. You might go to the zoning district where the project is located and you'll see some landscaping language right here under the zoning district. What can be confusing is under the performance standards article, there might be more general buffering and landscaping requirements in there too. So it's not always necessarily, oh, let me just look in this one spot and now I have the complete picture. Sometimes it can be looking in a few different places. And that's kind of why I'm around working with applicants to point them, make sure they're not missing some of that, because it can be easy to miss if you're looking at it for the first time. All right, so design review is, right, so we talked about the zoning ordinance, that kind of covers the whole town in various assortment of zoning districts, right? You have your village districts downtown, you have your commercial districts south along Route 1, you have your rural districts as you branch out away from downtown. But then our design review ordinance, kind of creates this, it's not labeled as an overlay, but it essentially acts as an overlay district. So, everything within the bounds of design review has an underlying zoning district. So our design review district will cover the VC1, the V1, some of the other village districts. But then in addition, anywhere in here also has to abide by our design review ordinance. So this is where, you potentially have overlap, but you potentially don't. So you can have a project like the apartment building we saw tonight that has to abide by site plan and design review. But you could also have a project like the garage that the zoning side, they just need building permits, but then on the design review side, they have to come to the board. So it's kind of a project by project situation of, whether a project needs to do design review and site plan or just design review.
If I can jump in here, so the only reason they came before us was because they're in one of these.
The garage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're in one of these two design review districts, and they are two different districts, but the same set of rules apply across both of them.
Yeah, so that property was located down here in the bottom right corner. This is where South Street is. So, I mean, design review, basically the trigger is any material change you're making to your property that's visible from the right-of-way triggers design review. So that's what the new garage is what caused the need for that. But it's important to note, you know, going back to the whole setback thing and anything like that, design review is only regulating the design of buildings and potentially some site features. So there's no dimensional standards in our design review ordinance. We're not looking at setbacks. We're not looking at density. You know, we're not looking at what the use is of the building. So in an application that triggers both site plan and design review, yeah, we'll look at those things because we would be looking at it under site plan, and we'll simultaneously be looking at the design aspect under design review. But it's important to note when those projects come forward that only trigger design review, that we wouldn't be looking at any of those zoning criteria.
Got a question, Lynn?
I do, but I can wait till other business or, well, no, but this is something that's been in my head. I arrived around the time of the first vision plan with the consultants from Boston. And all of these proposed buildings for housing and stuff looked like ye old New England. And lots of stickers went up. That's what we want.
Yep.
Tonight, we saw what may be the most modern glass building to come to Freeport. So, I mean, the previous vision was never formally adopted. It's just when I saw this rendering, I thought, is this a departure from what the town said they wanted? I happen to like it. I think it's nice looking. But it's certainly going a different direction than that vision plan led me to believe the town wanted to go in. So when you talk about design review.
Yep. So the board is, yeah. So the design review ordinance update in its current iteration, the planning board has spent a lot of time with. I think it really breaks down into two different parts. You have more of the historic preservation aspect for the older existing buildings, and then you have the standards for the new buildings, which are going to be more specific than what we currently have in design review, because right now our design review ordinance is really subjective and vague. It's, you know, it's really just asking the board to weigh in on however they feel personally. So the goal of it is to be more specific, but yeah, generally have more clear objective standards to guide development. But I don't necessarily think that there's anything in the drafts that we've been working on that would make a project like the one we saw tonight, like, not allowed. I think the goal that the planning board has had is to allow buildings like that going forward based on, you know, I mean, the consultant that put that draft together is the one who put up the boards with the stickers and all of that, so.
Right, okay, so I was still in the past thinking that might be where we're going, and I don't object to the mixing of things. It's just I was surprised.
I think the design review, the old version and more precisely the new version, is not so much about traditional versus modern. It is about, you know, if you have a wall with no windows in it, or if you have a wall with no breaks in it, it's rhythm. And it's rhythm that kind of fits in with what's around it. But it's easy to think of it as traditional versus modern, but I don't think that's really the language of it.
Except part of it is also about historic standards, you know, historic neighborhoods, historic, so there is an element of that. And by the way, these are the types of technicalities that I'm very interested in as well. I also don't have any problem with well, clearly had no problem with what we saw tonight, but there is the question mark about, well, I like guardrails. I think not just for me, but for everybody. I think it's important for us to have guardrails. And the question is, if it's vague, and this is what you're working on. If it's vague, you have no guardrails, or you have very few guardrails. And then you run the risk of creating problems. So to me, the question comes down to the amount of flexibility we have today versus what you're planning versus what perhaps we should be doing. And I'm interested in that for my function here on this board, because I've worked in communities before where sometimes boards kind of go off the rails themselves because they have no guardrails. And I think it's important both to the town and also just for us. I don't think that we want to be put in the position of taking a project or taking a town off the rails. So.
Well, on the other hand, though, I'm hoping that design review isn't just tick off the boxes, because you don't need thinking people if that's all it is. You know, I mean, in terms of how is it going to impact the neighborhood, the community, how do residents feel? I mean, those are all important, whether you call them general or subjective. I think the truth hopefully will lie somewhere in between, because you don't need all these people up here if it's just that black and white.
Well, that's why I actually use the term guardrails purposefully, because guardrails basically means as long as you're between the line, well, somewhere between this line and that line, you're
Right.
fine, right? And I think that human piece of it is going to be important, but we do need to know where those lines are.
Exactly.
And by the way, just as importantly, and I've dealt with this as well in a prior life in doing economic development work, if you don't have those lines spelled out at least to some degree of clarity, you will lose in court when somebody decides to challenge you on them. And you don't want that either. And by the way, let's face it, if you're going to go to court, you've already lost, because you've just sent 20 other developers away from your community forever because they're going to hear about it and never going to come back to Freeport. So, you know, part of what I want to do is, personally, what I'd like to do is get a clearer sense through this discussion and the future ones you're going to do, and maybe updates that you're going to provide to design review, et cetera, is where we can comfortably operate.
The way I think
Does that make sense?
Yes.
The way I think this is
Guardrails
headed,
is good.
you are right, Lynn. If it's just a bunch of, if you can get through this with check marks and boxes, they don't need us. And by nature, there is an element of this that's going to be subjective.
Right.
And I think the way they're going to provide guide rails, I think the format of the new ordinance is going to be a lot of pictures. We think this works, we think this works, and it will give you the guide rails you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into this because you will see the whole draft in a couple months probably. So it could be the February meeting that we end up inviting you to, and you can take a look at it. And yeah, and that's, the board wants your feedback. I mean, you saw Mitch tonight, he came out. I mean, they talked about the last meeting. So yeah, I think we'll have the chance to dive into the specifics of it and talk about it.
I find like we've lost a little bit of time here because you were on that subcommittee also that I was on when we were talking about some of the things to change in design review. But the other thing was we had the experts from the group that were going to, showed us the things from Bar Harbor and other towns and what they have in their ordinance. And they were going to come back with pictures. And it's been months, and I think we would have been, much better looking at those things before we started looking at some of the text issues, because I really felt I needed to see things. I mean, I have no architectural background, no design background or anything, and I think it's important to visualize what it is. And I'm really sorry that we haven't yet seen that. I hope
It hasn't gone
comes
as
soon.
fast as hoped, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I know, but we keep getting there. We haven't gotten yet.
Okay, so moving on, shoreland zoning. This is another overlay kind of zone. So again, like most of these areas that fall under shoreland zoning are going to have some underlying zone. So a lot of times, where a design review, typically, like a property along Main Street is going to fall under the Village Commercial 1 zoning district and then be overlaid by the design review district. The shoreland zones, you have shoreland area is one, marine waterfront is another one, our resource protection zone for our really kind of naturally sensitive areas. But these are typically, the underlying zones in these areas are more often than not our rural zones, because it's along our coast or streams or, other things like that. In general, shoreline zoning regulates 250 feet off of the coast, all tidal areas, freshwater wetlands, 75 feet off of streams, and other sensitive natural areas. So our resource protection could cover things like, kind of larger areas of steep slopes or floodplains or aquifer protection areas or things like that. So these are going to have additional standards that apply to these projects. So there's standards like, there's lot size requirements and impervious area requirements and vegetation clearing requirements. And if you do clear a certain amount of vegetation, you have to replant a certain amount. And there's very specific things like that in there. This ordinance is used by a few different bodies. So code enforcement uses it. I mean, just think of, how many single family homes fall, in the coastal areas and have to get building permits, and, they abide by the rules outlined in shoreline zoning. Coastal Waters uses it for, anything that extends out over the water. And then, we use it here as well. One of the biggest things that we used it here for at this board was the shoreline stabilization projects. Now those go to staff review board, so we'll probably see a little less of this ordinance, but there are still things in the shoreland areas other than those stabilization projects that would trigger a project coming to review here. So we will still occasionally use this ordinance. So it's just another thing to keep in mind, that this can operate in tandem with another application type, but it can also, there could be an application by itself. So for instance, you could have a campground that needs to come forward for a site plan application, but it could also be within the shoreland, and shoreland has its own standards around campgrounds and vegetation removal and impervious and things like that. Or you could have a shoreland zoning project for something else. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but that triggers project review board review only for the shoreland, and there's no site plan application attached to it.
The campground project you mentioned earlier in this meeting, is there a reason why, then why wouldn't that have come before this group?
Because the shoreland zoning ordinance basically points to the zoning ordinance process and follows the same process. So the fact that the change could be handled by the staff review board, let the shoreland aspect be handled by the staff review board as well.
In that way, you're working as an offshoot of us,
Yes.
because you've
Yeah.
taken over one of our
So
responsibilities.
it should still be thought
I
as
thought
the,
you just said that something like a campground in the zone might be something that we would see. So that's why I was asking the question, because it seemed like
The
it
ordinance
didn't come.
defines whether it goes to staff
Right.
review or
so
to us.
I'm saying like
It's
a
in the
new
ordinance.
campground, or like a large amendment to, like if Wolfsneck was building a new road, through their site.
Bought a new property to expand the park.
Yeah, and they were adding, 50 new campsites and, 30,000 square feet of impervious area or something, because they were going to do some, like actual cabins or something like that. Like that would trigger review by this board under site plan and shoreline, versus what was done in that other thing. Was a combination of in and out of the shoreland area and wasn't actually any new development on the ground.
The camera's driving me crazy.
Me too. Is that what it is?
I don't know what it's.
It's almost like it's trying to move.
Can I hit that red button?
It seems like it's trying to move and it's not, and it's.
And then finally, our subdivision ordinance. This is the one that's kind of more standalone. So there's no actual districts attached to our subdivision ordinance, right? Our subdivisions is just a thing that's triggered either when you divide land into 3 or more lots, or you put 5 or more units on a single parcel.
So what we saw today was,
Well, so the apartment building? So normally,
no,
it
the-
would have been.
the walk at 3.
Elm Street.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
correct. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
Guess they heard us. Sorry.
Thank you.
Right, so, a subdivision can take place whether you're in the rural area or the village or, no matter where you are. Then this process outlined here would apply. So there are some overlapping standards with zoning, and there are cases where a subdivision would also trigger site plan review, but you could also have a subdivision just by itself. Think of, your traditional dead-end, single-family lot subdivision would only trigger subdivision, not site plan review. But the subdivision ordinance does have a general review standard that points to the zoning ordinance that says your subdivision should meet all of the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So even if it's not triggering site plan review, it still has to meet all of those requirements. So when we look at the Elm Street subdivision going forward and, it only triggers subdivision review, but, there's some talk about parking requirements and things like that. They still have to meet those standards, or the space and bulk standards outlined in the zoning ordinance still have to be met for all of the lots and things like
And
setbacks and all that.
design.
Yep.
Yep.
Would all of that come to this board, though?
Yep. So we kind of talked about this going through, but you can have parcels in, different zones. You have the underlying zone, and then you have these other overlay zones outlined in these other chapters of the ordinance. You can have a project fall under different review types, site plan subdivision, site plan design review, any combination of these things. So I think the important point that I wanted to kind of call out here for this presentation is that when we look at applications, it's just important to keep in mind what review type we're looking at for each and every project, because it's easy to get into the mindset of, oh, well, on that other project, we talked about design. So let's talk about that going forward. But this one isn't in design review, or, vice versa. The apartment building on C1, we didn't talk about design review because Run South is outside of design review, but now we're talking about one downtown, so we should be talking about it. So it's just important to keep that in the back of your mind as these projects come in as to what set of standards we're reviewing each one.
Normally, you're indicating in your staff report which ones it falls under when you give it to us.
I try to. So kind of in summary, just to wrap this one up, we have a bunch of different sources of generating land use policy direction in a more general sense at the town. This is primarily the function of the planning board and town council, but at this board level, we use those policies to review specific projects. So especially where we just adopted a new comprehensive plan, over the next few years, we're probably going to experience a lot of zoning changes. Whether it's increases in densities or changes to building height or new environmental standards or whatever it is, all of those recommendations called out in the comp plan are going to lead to potential amendments to our zoning ordinance. So we'll have to, keep this board in the loop and just up to date on what's being changed. So as new projects come forward, we know we're reviewing things with the most modern ordinance. And like I said, going forward, when we look at following agendas in the next coming months, I'll try to add on presentations that dive in deeper into each of these different topics.
And
But
will we get hard copies of these various presentations?
I can, if you want to.
I
Yep.
could-
I can
You could
email.
put the slideshow.
Yeah, I can
I didn't keep it all.
I can email you the slides tomorrow, and the follow-up ones I can send you. Yeah.
Nice job, Kyle. That was helpful, wasn't it?
Very good, yeah, very good, Kyle.
Yeah, if there's specific questions that people have going forward that they want highlighted or touched on, feel free to just shoot me an email, and then I'll make sure to include it in one of the follow-up ones.
One quick question. Did I miss next year's calendar?
I forgot to do it. I will have it for the January meeting. But our January meeting would be still the third Wednesday, so the 21st.
21st?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I move we close the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
All in favor? Yep. Unanimous.
Thank you.